I remember my group got so
Really?
Yeah.
I think that's what you guys report to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. 5 seconds. All right. Last time, we're gonna bring it up.
Yeah.
We feel bad.
Okay.
100%.
Thank you. Everybody right?
That's true.
Okay, so. With that being done, talk to me. How do we feel? Yeah? At group 1, how'd you feel? Good. All right. Group 2? Yeah. Group 3? Good. Good. Yeah. Group 4?
There's answers.
Group 5?
Little time crunch.
Time crunch. Okay. Group 6?
Fantastic.
Fantastic. All right. Group 7?
It's at least a D.
Okay. Passing. All right. Group 8? No words. Okay. Group 9? Good. Okay. Group 10? Awesome. All right. If you didn't realize it yet, everybody had a different quiz. Okay. 2 groups had a quiz that pretty much gave you all the answers on it, right? Which 2 group were those? That group? This group. Okay. Perfect. You guys finished in what? 2 minutes ish. Less than that. Okay. Which groups had the question in the completely different language? What did y'all get from that?
3.
3? Okay.
You just love to play out.
Let it like okay. So I told you, you all know the answer to every single question. The question was asking, what's the name of the class? Okay. How many of you guys had the one where you could use your phone or computer? Okay, perfect. Did that help out? Yeah. Yeah? Oh, you're definitely okay. Awesome. So all this to say that there are a wide variety of different things that can affect the way that we perceive something, right? So with that being said, let's jump into the actual content for today. So the overall public health concern is obesity, right? We know obesity is bad, but specifically, how does obesity affect specific populations? Okay, so quick background here. As you can see, these are some trend lines with obesity and severe obesity. As you can tell, obesity being BMI above 30, severe obesity being BMI above 40, that's increasing pretty linearly, okay? So we see quite a few increase in the obesity rates. And I've double checked the math too. So even now, 2022, 2023, it hasn't gone down much at all, right? Still within that 40, 41% obesity rates in the US, okay? So now we know that it's increasing, all right? So why should we care about this? So specific health risks with obesity, you all pretty much know these, but cardiovascular disease, diabetes, asthma, hypertension, stroke, coronary heart disease as well. We know that these things are associated with obesity. Okay, so we know obesity is increasing. We know factors that why we should care, why obesity is increasing. But again, now the big question is, why is it important for us to address obesity, right? Why is it in our future careers, whether it be PTs, PAs, health coaches, strength and conditioning coaches, health educators, public health, why should we care about this stuff, right? So 2 specific reasons. First one, mortality rates, right? These are the top 10 leading causes of death in the US. As you can see, a lot of these coincide with obesity, right? Like stroke, heart disease, respiratory issues, diabetes. So we know that with obesity increasing, these deaths are also increasing. That's one reason why we should care. But if I still haven't convinced you yet, let's look at it at a financial standpoint, right? The medical cost for obesity is increasing every single year, right? So specifically in the US, we spend about $147 to $200 billion per year trying to combat obesity rates, right? So these are 2 big reasons why we should care. in whatever field you're in, whether it be in the medical field, in the coaching field, in the public health field, we should care about these things, right? So, what contributes to increased obesity rates? Well, specifically two components. First one, obviously genetic factors, such as food intake, food storage, thermogenesis, but specifically in today's lecture, I'm gonna focus on the behavioral components, which include physical inactivity, diet, and specifically built environment and policy, and the way that these components affect overall health and wellness. Okay? So now let's jump into the actual population we're trying to address. So we're looking at the Latinx population. So quick definition here, guys. Latinx being any individual of Latin American origin or descent. You'll also hear me say Hispanic. All of that means just Spanish speaking. Okay? Let's know the differential between those. So within the US, we've seen a mass growth in the Latinx population from 1970 to even 2022, 2023. 1970, we had about 10 million people. 2023, we had about over 60 million people in the US, right? That's great, that's amazing. Because with that, we see cultural diversity, we see economic growth. However, there are certain things that we still need to address, like the adverse health risks or health effects among this population, right? So with obesity in mind, the Hispanic population is one of the minority groups in the US that's at risk for obesity, right? Specifically because of physical inactivity. As you can see up here, about 30% of Hispanic individuals in the US are physically inactive, right? Because of that, they're more likely to have some of those adverse health risk effects that we previously discussed, okay? So now we know what we're talking about. Now we know what's important. But let me put it to you in a more broad perspective here. This map here shows the prevalence of obesity in general, just the US population, everyone included, right? So anything in orange or red is pretty high obesity rates, right? So overall, you have some yellow, some orange, some red, some green as well. So still pretty bad, but you still have some characteristics there that, saying that California's not bad, Colorado's not too bad. But what happens when we just look at the Hispanic population in the US? So this is just general US population. But now, looking at the Hispanic population, things change quite a bit, right? So now we have higher rates of obesity in the US. And to put it into numbers, highest prevalence, Mississippi with 44.7, Kansas specifically 40.6, right? So we know that obesity rates among the Hispanic population is increasing. And we know that obesity is bad because of those two factors we previously discussed, right? So as health professionals, we should ask ourselves, how can we minimize this, right? How can we help these specific populations to minimize obesity rates, minimize medical costs, and minimize the mortality rates within the US population, right? So, the big question here, how does all this information connect to policy and the built environment, right? So now we're gonna answer that question. So what are the factors affecting health and wellness? So I'm gonna start with just the basic overarching factors, specifically with the US population, and then kind of just make it more specific to the Latinx population, okay? So looking at the environment, the built environment is defined as connection between the neighborhood and overall other aspects of the environment when it comes to health, right? So that's what we mean when we're looking at built environment. So specifically in low-income neighborhoods, things like aesthetics, cleanliness of your environment, whether it be with parks, whether it be with facilities, whether it be with just your neighborhood in general, all these things will impact your perception of being physically active or improving your overall health, right? Crime is a big thing too. Areas of high crime, you're gonna see lower levels of physical activity. Individuals may not want to go out and walk around the block. They might not want to go out and go around the park, right? With high crime rates. Safety, such as high traffic volume, speeds, things like this do affect an individual's ability to want to be physically active, right? Excess air pollution, sidewalk condition. If you have a lot of cracks in the sidewalk, if the sidewalk isn't conducive to the individuals who have a physical disability, right? All these things do impact their ability and their decision to be physically active, okay? Street connectivity as well, and street density. Depending on the land use mix, it can be promoting physical activity or it could be hindering physical activity, right? It all just depends on the way you use the specific land use, right? So all these things are just basic things that we look at in the general US population. But continuing on, accessibility is a big one, right? When you all took your quiz today, some of you were able to use your phones, it things a lot easier, right? Other people weren't able to use it. That specifically would have been helpful with those that had the question with the different language, right? So all these things we never think about until we face them in real life situations, right? So access to parks, good condition parks as well, right? Or facilities as well. If you have access to a recreation facility, are you able to afford that, right? Or is it just a choice between, do I want to go work out or do I want to eat today, right? Healthy foods, food deserts as well, that's a big one. A lot of these low-income neighborhoods don't have access to affordable, healthy food. Because of that, you're gonna choose a cheaper alternative, which more than likely is gonna be an unhealthy alternative, right? Weather, cold weather versus hot weather. Everybody in here took K220. When you're on the mile, we always ask, would you prefer doing this in the cold or when it's hot? Typically, no one wants to do either work, right? You want it to be a good temperature to do physical activity. If we force you guys to run in the snow, not gonna be good. Force you guys to run in 110-degree weather, again, not going to be good. So weather, big thing that impacts physical activity decisions.